Welcome back to the Adventures in Historyland YouTube channel, ladies and gentlemen. And yes, I can hear the cheers from here. Jimmy's back.
Hello.
And that means we're talking about the Russians and
Yeah.
1812. You know, you could have laid some money on that, I guess. But, well, next year maybe we'll be talking about 1813 and 1814, and then you'll feel really stupid.
Or even 1807.
What? I mean, going back in time? This is madness.
Yeah.
Now, today we're here to answer the question that you have all been thinking about.
All three of you.
Yeah, all three of you have been thinking about endlessly since obviously, well, time immemorial, and that is, if you were to rate the Russian generals, the principal Russian generals of 1812, where would they sit in, say, a tier list? Well, thanks to the magic of bored people on the internet and coders, we actually have the technology to bring you the definitive roster, the definitive list of Russian generals who participated in the 1812 campaign. The rules are simple. We have 6 categories, which is God tier, legendary, unbreakable, competent, tricks only, and God help us. And into these we will be inserting 30 Russian generals. Jimmy has the deciding vote as to where they go, because he's the guy who actually knows what he's talking about. I am the nodding head that theoretically will make this video possible. I will put input in wherever I see input to put in, but Jimmy is the Minister of War here, as you all on this channel know. And so, are you excited about this, Jimmy?
I am excited because, truth to tell, I'm looking at the names we've got so far, and I am not completely certain about where I'm going to put some of them. So, it will be an interesting discussion, I'm sure, and maybe on the very rare occasion I might actually listen to your opinion.
Indeed, as has been the theme throughout the entire 1812 series. So, let's begin, shall we?
Should we make a start?
Let's make a start. So, where are we starting?
All right, we're starting at the very beginning, which is a very good place to start, with General Alexander Kutaisov, who was the commander of the Russian artillery, or more specifically of the artillery of the First Army, until it united with the Second Army, and then he became the artillery commander of the whole army. And he fought at battles such as Smolensk and Borodino, where he was killed leading a counterattack at the Raevsky Redoubt. So, what do you think, Josh? Where should we put Kutaisov?
Right. Well, Kutaisov, very brave man. Yep. He's supposed to have been a very intelligent man. He was Deputy Minister of Ordnance or something under Arakcheyev or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
But then again, he has this reckless streak, and obviously you can see from his portrait, he was a very handsome man. He was something of a dandy.
Very much a ladies' man in St. Petersburg. Yeah. I think he also composed music and wrote poetry and stuff like that.
Okay, so definitely not God tier, can't be legendary, can't be God help us. I don't think he's tricks only because he's a gunner. Competent?
Yeah, I'm having a bit of trouble with him as well, because he's definitely not well known enough, certainly in non-Russian circles, to be legendary. but I think he's kind of better than competent. That's the thing. He's one of the few. Before Borodino, he was one of the few Russian generals who actually understood what Barclay was going on about. When Barclay was saying, we need to retreat, we need to let Napoleon extend his supply lines, and it doesn't matter how much territory we surrender because eventually we'll get it back. So it's difficult for me to actually pick between those categories. I think he's probably either top of competent or sort of lower tier Unbreakable. I think I'm going to put him in Unbreakable for the time being, and then we'll see with the others.
Okay.
Like how whether we have to change our assessment.
Okay.
Right.
So he's going in Unbreakable for now.
Yeah, for the time being. So we move on to Uvarov, Fyodor Uvarov, the commander of the 1st Cavalry Corps during the campaign and at Borodino, where he famously joined Plato in the cavalry raid, which frightened Napoleon and resulted in Napoleon delaying the pivotal attack for a couple of hours. So, what do you think about Uvarov, Josh?
I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Uvarov. He's just striking on the wall of the military gallery because he's one of the ones in the Guard Cossack uniform of the Imperial. Yeah, right. Okay. So obviously, so I can't put him in the top. I couldn't put him in the top 3. He's not God help us, I don't think. Granted, I only know about his record at Borodino, really. I don't know much about him thereafter. But if it's therefore I'm basing this only on Borodino, and that has to make him tricks only.
I would tend to agree with that assessment. I think, he did obviously take part in sort of various actions and charges both before and after, but nothing sort of particularly brilliant or anything. So he's, it's either a question of competent or tricks only. And I think for the time being, especially, at Borodino, he didn't make much progress at all. But it was the sort of psychological impact that both he and Platov's Cossacks placed on Napoleon. So I think I would put him in tricks only as well. Yeah.
Vindicated for now.
Indeed.
Okay,
So
into tricks only you go.
Yep. So we move on to Alexei Yamalov, who's a very interesting chap. During the 1812 campaign, or at least at the beginning of it, he was the chief of staff to Barclay de Tolly's First Army, even though he wasn't particularly. He was a reasonably sort of competent staff officer, but he was plotting alongside Bagration behind Barclay's back. But he was a very brave man at Borodino. He, alongside Kutaisov, counterattacked at the redoubt and helped the Russians retake it, which was a very important moment in the battle. Very, very brave, very inspirational commander on the battlefield. I don't think he was a particularly brilliant staff officer, but he was able to get some stuff done. So, where would you put him?
Okay, well, I think he's a little higher, I think. Especially because he also had a fairly distinguished career after the Napoleonic Wars as well.
Yes, of Russia.
He also has the distinction of having one of the most original, maybe the most original portrait in the gallery, because of that turn over the shoulder thing.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. That fascinates me. But nevertheless, okay, right. I don't consider him like a military genius or anything like that. But is he unbreakable?
That's a very good question. I think
low tier Unbreakable or something.
yeah. Yeah, if we're putting Kutaisov in Unbreakable, then I guess it would make some sense to also put Yamalov there, and also later on in the Napoleonic Wars, in 1813 at Leipzig, Yamalov was commanding the guards and led a decisive attack on or counterattack against Napoleon. So yeah, I think Unbreakable would definitely fit. I mean, if you are speaking from Barclay de Tolly's perspective, at the early stages of the 1812 campaign, you may want to put him in God Help Us, but
yeah.
I think, and to be fair, compared to some other Russian staff officers, I think, yeah, I think he belongs in Unbreakable.
Okay, we'll put him in Unbreakable for now. We'll see what happens. I actually need to question: is he above or below Kutaisov?
He is
in Unbreakable.
I think he's above.
Above Kutaisov. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. There we go. Right. Carry on.
So we move on to Mikhail Vorontsov, and Mikhail Vorontsov is the British-educated son of Semyon Vorontsov, the long-serving Russian ambassador in Britain, and in 1812 he commanded the 2nd Combined Grenadier Division. Was at the front line at both at Borodino and also at the Battle of Shevardino. Bagration led his division into the fray, so very much near the front of the action. He was rather heavily wounded at Borodino, and he enjoyed a fairly distinguished career after 1812 as well, serving mainly in southern Russia and Ukraine, and indeed in the Crimea. So what about Vorontsov?
I'm going to go competent.
Okay, that's interesting, because I am inclined to actually put him in Unbreakable, and actually, maybe even above Yamalov. It's, I don't know. It's slightly difficult, because you can make the case that Yamalov is legendary, but I'm not entirely sure you can make the same case for Vorontsov. Maybe I will put him in Unbreakable and in front of Yamalov, I think.
Okay.
Our next guy, whose name is, well, to be fair, quite a few of these guys, their names can be a bit of a mouthful, but we've got Fabian Gottlieb von der Ostensacken.
He must be one of the longest names actually here, to be honest.
Well, yes, indeed. No, at least rivaling Mikhail Andreas Barclay de Tolly. So, Ostensacken. So, in the 1812 campaign, he didn't play a massive role. He served in Chichagov's Army of the Danube, and then when Chichagov united with Tomasov, Chichagov kind of went on his own way towards Minsk and towards the Berezina, and then he detached Ostensacken to continue pursuing Schwarzenberg and Renier into the Grand Duchy of Warsaw. And Ostensacken actually did a fairly good job of doing that, being outnumbered, but still being able to sort of press forward and winning some successful engagements. And then after, in 1813 and 1814, he also held pretty senior commands, at least at corps level. So fairly successful guy. Where would you put him?
He sounds again quite competent to me.
Yeah.
Maybe not brilliant or anything like that, but certainly a guy you could depend on. So I'm going to say competent.
I think I would agree with that. I don't really think he's unbreakable, at least not for the stuff he did in 1812. So yeah, I think he belongs under competent, and we don't have anyone else there for the time being, so we might as well populate that for the time being. We may reassess as we get more names onto the list. Now, here's a fun one. Admiral Pavel Chichagov. So
the amphibian.
The amphibian. The only admiral we have on our list. And the reason that we have an admiral on our list is because he did fight on land. And he commanded the army of the Danube and did a fairly decent job in actually, marching that army to where it was needed, i.e., somewhere around the Berezina where the plan was to trap Napoleon. But once he got to the Berezina, that is where things start going awry, and very hilariously he issued just I think a couple of weeks before he got to the Berezina, where his strategic situation was looking quite good, and Napoleon was still retreating, and his army was in the shambles. Chichagov actually sort of thought that he could capture Napoleon, and he issued a proclamation which basically said, this is the scourge of Europe. We must apprehend this man. He is a short, stocky man with black hair, and just to be on the safe side, please send to headquarters any individuals of lower than average size or something like that.
Okay.
But it didn't quite happen that way. Do you have anything to add to that and where we should put him?
Nothing to add. Chichagov is a fascinating guy, and he does, like you say, he does quite well up until Berezina, because he is a pain in the neck to Napoleon in the south, really.
Right.
Where to put him, though?
Yeah.
Because up until Berezina he's competent, and then he suddenly turns incompetent.
Yes.
He's duped royally.
Right.
And partially it's because he doesn't look up and down the river for other places to cross. So is he tricks only? Partly because he's an admiral.
Right. Yeah. I guess just the surprise factor of placing an admiral in command of an army on its own may. But I mean, I have to say, so he was very much tricked at the Berezina, and he could have done more. At the same time, he saw what was happening in front of him. He saw that Victor's Corps was building a bridge. And he was like, well, I've got to be here. But I think it's basically at this point in Russian history, and indeed in European history, I mean, you can't really have admirals commanding land armies. You can get away with it 100 years earlier, and in fact, when Peter the Great sort of built his navy, no one had any naval experience, so he had to basically get generals to become admirals and so learn some navigation or something. So yeah, and arguably, actually, you have to be smarter to be an admiral than you do to be a general. But still, Chichagov failed in a fairly basic task. If he had some frigates, he would have known what to do. So I think it has to be God help us, because
okay.
God help us, we have a bloody admiral in charge of the army. I'm sure that's what some members of the of the Russian army. Some members who served under him would have said, "Yeah, Боже мой, God, yeah, my God."
Yeah. Things are bad.
So yeah, and as you say, he did a fairly decent job on getting to the Berezina, but still, I think he's
okay.
you can't have an admiral commanding a land army. Like, that's just ridiculous. You've got the Tsar of Russia has so many more competent generals. Why are you?
Yeah.
Chichagov was very much a favorite of the Tsar, and
okay. That's fair. Yeah. That's fair. That's a fair analysis.
So we now turn to Piotr Wickenstein, in which case it's probably the ridiculous to the sublime, because Wickenstein is the commander of First Corps in the First Army, but fairly early on, his corps was detached in order to defend the northern flank of the Russian army towards St. Petersburg, and he did a brilliant job. I mean, he defeated Oudinot, hands down. Sincere kind of got the better of him at the Battle of Polotsk, the first Battle of Polotsk, but he managed to hold the fort down, and it was essentially a stalemate, which is what his job was there to do. His job was to prevent the enemy from getting to Petersburg, and then after Napoleon's main army was falling apart, after the French northern flank was falling apart, Wittgenstein, after receiving some reinforcements, just went on the offensive, and part of this three-pronged pincer movement alongside Chichagov and Kutaisov, which worked fairly well until the Berezina, where most of Napoleon's sort of corps did get away, but still highly successful, very much a legend in his own time in St. Petersburg. All the songs written about him. So yeah, where are you going to put him?
I think I have to. I don't know whether I would think that he would have to be moved down eventually, as other particular guys are introduced. Yeah. But at the moment, I think, just based on his on the way contemporaries felt about him, he has to be legendary.
I completely agree. I think there is a case for putting him in Unbreakable, and right now, to be fair, no one really knows about Wittgenstein, but the fact is that he won some of the earliest victories that the Russian army could celebrate against the Grand Army, and part of that reputation is what led him to be appointed commander-in-chief, replacing Kutaisov in 1813. So yeah, very much legendary, and I suspect he's probably going to stay there.
Yeah, I think so.
So let us carry on.
Looking interesting.
Let us carry on with Ataman Count General of Cavalry Matvey Ivanovich Plato. Now, Plato is a very interesting guy, obviously. Ataman of the Don Cossacks, cavalry general, and commanding his corps of Cossacks, as many as 10,000 men, riding around, skirmishing, scouting, doing the things that Cossacks do, surprising Napoleon. So yeah, and obviously at Borodino, the going behind enemy lines and giving Napoleon the big old fright. So where are we going to put Platov?
Now, I'm a fan of Platov, and it's true, I'm a fan mostly of his legend. He's actually quite a mysterious guy. Most people just know of him as the infamous Cossack general. And that was what I guess he wanted to be seen as. He was quite happy to play up on that. But I know I put Uvarov in tricks only because of Borodino. But Platov is an outright legend, surely.
Right, exactly. And I feel like, and especially not even in Russia. Obviously, in Russia, he was a legend, and in terms of the songs written about him, he's only third to Kutaisov and Wittgenstein. But also in the West, well, in France, obviously, he had a tremendous reputation for for causing havoc. But in Britain, we had Cossack mania, Platov mania in 1813, 1814. Everyone wanted to dress like a Cossack, and all the ladies wanted to wanted to catch a glimpse of the Cossacks as they were riding down the mall or wherever they would have been, proceeding in London.
Hyde Park, I think.
Hyde Park, that was it. They were bivouacking in Hyde Park. But yeah, I absolutely agree. Legendary status and above Wittgenstein.
Mm-hmm. So that was fairly straightforward.
Yep.
It's funny. I would go so far as to say actually that if Waterloo had not happened, he would be more famous than Blucher in Napoleonic circles.
Very potentially, because they have a similar sort of reputation for essentially being a light cavalry commander who just goes and charges at anything he sees. Although arguably Platov was even more sort of refined and had a better intellect than.
I was going to say he's actually a little bit on the sharper side than Blucher.
I mean, the chap has an honorary doctorate in law from Oxford. Although I think Blucher probably also got one actually.
Probably. But yeah, I'm gonna say that. So definitely legendary.
Yeah. Agreed.
And now this one is probably too easy, but carry on.
Yes. Okay. Mikhail Ilarionovich Galyanishev-Kutuzov, Field Marshal, Prince Smolensky. I mean, Commander-in-Chief of the Russian armies after late August 1812. Fought Napoleon at Borodino and commanded the retreat after Borodino, abandoned Moscow at the Council of Filey, and then with his sort of genius strategic maneuver to get to the Tarantino camp and essentially paved the way to the Battle of Maloyaroslavets, which very much was the definitive turning point in the campaign. So yeah, I mean, I don't really need to ask you, do I?
No.
Straight into legendary, and there is a case for putting him under Platov, but he has to go above Platov.
Yeah, he does. He does have to go above. It's just I don't know, court niceties kind of thing. He was Platov's commander, and he has more songs written about him and things like that. So
true. So the next one, Duke Eugen of Württemberg. Now, is an interesting chap. In 1812, he was very young, just 24 years old. He's actually a cousin of the Tsar, because the Tsar's mother, Maria Fyodorovna, was a Württemberg princess. So yeah, the Tsar's first cousin, and very much someone who is who's popular at the Russian court. And indeed, when Alexander's was sort of rather unpopular for stuff that was going on in 1812, firstly for making a deal with Napoleon, and then secondly for allowing the Russian army to retreat so much, Eugen was talked of as a potential Tsar, as someone who could sort of be the figurehead of a coup. So yeah, very much very popular in court circles, but also a very good, arguably brilliant commander in the field, despite his youth. He had already sort of shown quite a lot of promise in the 1807 campaign, and in 1812 at the I think both at Valentina Gora and at Borodino, like Barclay de Tolly had to rely on him and the square of one of his battalions to actually save him from being charged by the enemy cavalry. So yeah, where do you think he should go?
I don't know a lot about this guy.
Yeah. Okay.
To be properly honest.
Sure.
So I don't have a great deal of confidence where to put him. But I was going to put him incompetent. But he sounds a little unbreakable.
Yeah.
So maybe low tier unbreakable.
I'm inclined to agree with that. The only question is whether he goes above or under Kutaisov. I mean, he could even go above Yamalov, I guess. I think he probably goes between Yamalov and Kutaisov in Unbreakable. Like, he wasn't particularly senior, but he obviously at both Valentina Gora and at Borodino, he did have to retreat, but after putting up a very good fight, and he had a very good tactical understanding as well. So yeah, I think Unbreakable is where he goes.
Just above Kutaisov for now.
Just above Kutaisov. Okay, Dmitry Petrovich Neverovsky.
He's unbreakable. Just do it.
Yeah, all right. Unbreakable. I mean, at Shevardino, at Borodino, like, very much in the front line. At Krasny as well before Smolensk. I mean, yeah, he was very much.
Try and shift this guy. I dare you. It's like
right. Yeah, he's basically a mini Bagration. Like, and very very appropriately, he's the most senior Russian commander to be buried at, or Russian officer to be buried at Borodino, other than Bagration. So, yeah, Unbreakable. I mean, we could even argue low tier legendary, but certainly Unbreakable.
So is he above Vorontsov? Is he at the top?
Yeah, at the top of Unbreakable so far, and probably will remain there. Okay, so now we go on to General Mikhail Miloradovich. What are your thoughts about Miloradovich and what you know about him?
He was at Austerlitz, wasn't he? He has quite a long service record.
Yeah.
I don't actually know what his performance was like at Austerlitz.
It depends on which sources you read.
Okay, so it's kind of in the air. Okay.
Yeah.
Was he on?
Miloradovich kind of had a contretemps about Austerlitz.
Yeah, I seem to recall something about that. On the right flank at Borodino, he was the rear guard that the last to leave Moscow sort of thing, wasn't he?
Yes, that's right. He ended up commanding the rear guard. He was very much in the thick of the fighting at Borodino, and he kind of tricked Murat into accepting the armistice, and had tea together with him and stuff like that, while all the Cossacks were shouting "Ura!"
And of course, in the retreat, the front retreat, obviously, he played a big role in the retreat. He was one of the go-getters, I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
And obviously, later in his career, he died trying to reason with the Decembrists and things. That's sort of what I know about Miloradovich.
Yeah.
He was a peacock. Like you say, the Russian Murat.
So, where do you put Miloradovich?
I don't know.
You don't know?
don't know if he's unbreakable, but competent doesn't seem to sum him up either. He had moments. He seemed to be. He's somewhere between unbreakable. Or is he tricks? He's somewhere in the middle three, I think.
Okay, that's
Unbreakable,
actually
competent,
very
or
interesting.
tricks only, I think. But I don't know which one to put him in. Because he's not tricks only, but in a way he is. And then he's competent because obviously he faced some pretty decent French commanders during the retreat, and he bulldozed Ney and he chased off Davout, and so that suggests a certain amount of unbreakability. But at the same time, he doesn't have the reputation as some of the others. So I don't quite know.
I would be inclined to put a low tier legendary or high tier unbreakable. Actually, I think we should leave him alone for the time being and go to the others, and then we'll see
Okay.
where to put Mirandovich, once we've looked at the others, because it is a difficult decision to make. Okay, so we carry on to Baron Fyodor Korff. What do you know about Mr. Korff?
Very, very little. I know he was. I know that he was. I don't think he had an independent command, did he? I think he commanded under one of the others, and I have heard his name referenced in battles, but I don't actually know. I wouldn't know precisely where to, just off the bat, like some of the others.
Okay.
I wouldn't know where to put him.
I think most likely he would go under competent. The question is whether he goes above Ostensacken, and I would say he probably goes below him, if only because Ostensacken actually ended up taking more sort of senior commands and ended up being a field marshal actually. So yeah, that's why Korff I think goes under Ostensacken. Okay, so carrying on. Yakov Konyev. Konyev is an interesting dude. He is he's a light cavalryman, a hussar, and he was part of Wickenstein's first corps, and detached pretty early. He commanded the rear guard during the retreat from Drissa, but then when Wittgenstein was detached, he joined Wittgenstein, and he alongside Wittgenstein fought at the Battle of Klastitsi, where he was very successful in driving off Oudinot's advance guard, but then during the pursuit kind of got ahead of himself and fell into an enemy ambush and was killed by enemy cannon as a result. So where do you think Konyev goes?
I'm inclined to say tricks only. Because he's one of those sorts of swashbuckly types.
I would tend to agree. I mean, he does have quite a decent reputation. He served under Suvorov in the Italian campaign, and he's rather similar in reputation to LaSalle in France. But having said that, I don't think, certainly outside Russia, I don't think his name is particularly well known. Does that mean? And I would broadly agree with you. He probably goes under tricks only, but does he go above Uvarov or below?
I don't know what was his highest command. I mean, Uvarov commanded a corps.
True.
Uvarov would surely be more competent than Konyev.
That is also true. Yeah. I think Konyev still goes in tricks only, and he probably actually goes above Uvalov.
Well, yeah, this is true. I mean, I've read that when he died, that was a really big deal.
Yeah, he was the most senior Russian general to die until Bagration, I believe. So yeah, and the Russians sort of mourned him a great deal. So I mean, yeah, I'm disinclined to put him as high as legendary, even though there is a case to be made. But you know, I think putting it's probably shortchanging him. But
what else can you do in a way, really? You're
yeah,
kind of trapped because he's obviously
yeah.
not up with Plato and Kutuzov and Wittgenstein and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
but he's obviously a little. It's maybe he's falling between gaps here. I think maybe it will become clearer as we go on.
We move on to Piotr Konovnitsyn. After Borodino, I think he succeeded to command of Duchkov's third corps,
Okay.
but he was a divisional commander before.
Okay. All I know about him is that he fought at Borodino. He was one of the front. He was in one of the front sectors at Borodino.
Also, both before and after Borodino, he actually commanded the rearguard leading to Borodino, and he did a fairly decent job of that. But yeah, I think he is definitely above competent. He might be lower tier Unbreakable. He's not. I don't really think you can make a case for legendary. So I think it's between Unbreakable and competent.
I mean, looking at the tier list as it is at the second, I think he's probably competent.
I can't actually remember whether he was present at the Council of Philly, and if he was, what he thought. I don't think he was present in the famous painting, but he might have actually been in real life. Yeah, I mean, if he favored retreat, then then obviously that's a sign of competence, and that's also a sign of arguably being unbreakable. But I think for the time being, we'll put him at the top of competent. Although even against Ostensacken, I think he still goes on top of ahead of Ostensacken. Given that on the whole we are talking about 1812 here.
Yeah.
Okay, so our next guy, Dmitry Doctorov. So, your thoughts?
Again, I have a very general sort of appraisal of his career.
Mm-hmm.
He served. He was at Borodino, and he served in 13 and 14, I believe, as well. Yeah. Certainly no lower than competent.
I agree. He was so yeah, he was actually at Austerlitz, and he was he commanded the first column, which went to attack Davout without much success, but he actually managed to withdraw his men pretty skillfully, and the council that Alexander called to discuss who would become supreme commander, his was one of the names mentioned in that conversation. And then at Borodino, he was in command of 6th Corps, and then later on, Kutuzov sent him to command the 2nd Army to replace the mortally wounded Bagration. If he goes in Unbreakable, does it go above Neverovsky? I think he does. Yeah. I think I'm putting him in Unbreakable and above Neverovsky. I think
that's fair. He seems to have a held higher commands.
Right, higher commands, and also I think somewhat of a greater reputation.
Just as tough and more responsibility, so that's fair.
Yeah. Okay. So next one, Hans Karl von Diebitsch. So Diebitsch in 1812 served as Wittgenstein's chief of staff. So yeah, where to put him?
Chiefs of staff, tricky staff officers in tier lists. Maybe he has to be competent.
Right. I mean, this is the thing. Like, although arguably with Diebitsch, he did eventually take independent commands afterwards, and I think even in 1812 he had some degree of independence from Wittgenstein, because I think Wittgenstein, when Wittgenstein went to the Berezina, I think he left Diebitsch behind to keep an eye on the Prussians and on MacDonald. So, but then there's the question of where you put him in terms of legendary or unbreakable. I mean, like, you could argue he's legendary because his portrait is in the Field Marshal's Hall in the Winter Palace. But can you do that through his performance in 1812 alone? For the time being, I think I'll put him at the top of competent, and we will reassess. We'll reassess whether we need to move him up. Okay, next guy, again, a very fascinating character, Denis Davidov. Talk about him.
Denis Davidov, I can actually talk about Denis Davidov. Yes. I read his book. Excellent partisan commander. At the top of his game in that. No high field command above large bands of partisans, however. So unclear as to how he would stack in terms of army command. But absolutely a fine officer and a very intelligent one.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, where should we put him there?
Funnily enough, I'm curious as to whether or not he should actually be tricks only because he's a partisan.
Right. Yeah.
I don't mean that because it's a low tier. I mean that because he's not a general who has commanded corps like the Unbreakable lot, even though arguably in his realm he was. Mm-hmm. He took like 3,000 prisoners or something like that.
Yeah.
Which arguably is probably a better combat record than some of the guys up there who had who were made who had held high commands, but in 1812, and he dined out on his experiences for the rest of his life. Yeah. So I'm not sure if he's tricks only.
Yeah, I think. Funnily, the thing is, the way we've structured this tier list, it's not necessarily from good to bad.
No, yeah.
And yeah, because I think with Davidov, it's either legendary or tricks only, very much like Konyev. And indeed with Plato, but we decided that Plato was, because of his international fame, belonged in legendary. And I don't think, even though Davidov certainly, as you say, he dined out on his experiences as a partisan commander. He influenced Tolstoy's character Denisov in War and Peace, and the communists loved him because he was a partisan, even though he was, a regular officer, and indeed a noble. But Kutaisov was a noble, so there is definitely a very strong case for putting him in legendary, and we may indeed sort of put him there, once we've had a look at the others. But I think he does belong right now at the top of tricks only.
Put him there for now. Yeah, he could well be legendary, but it's not clear at this moment. why they are not. Because Plato obviously trumps him, but doesn't mean he doesn't belong in lower tier legendary either, because he did some pretty crazy stuff.
Yep, true. Okay, so Karl Fyodorovich Bagavut. Comments.
It for me is amongst the Doctorovs and kind of Nitsins of this world. That I know he fought at Borodino and held high commands thereafter, but again, I'm inclined from the vague appreciation I have of him to put him again somewhere in the middle.
I would agree. He's sort of somewhere between Unbreakable and Competent. A very brave officer, commanded 2nd Corps throughout the 1812 campaign. At Borodino, his corps was sent to the extreme left flank, where he sort of took command of that sector after Nikolai Tuchkov was mortally wounded. And he held on very well at the heights there at Utitsa, but also he at the Battle of Tarantino he would lead one of the columns, which to surprise Murat in the cunning plan that Kutaisov had set, but in the process of the battle he was killed very, very quickly. So in a sense, he's actually little like Kutaisov. So I think
Kutaisov is tenuous, hanging on there at the bottom of Unbreakable. He could drop to Competent very easily.
He could. But I think Bagavut is like the sort of guy, very much sort of up and at them, very happy to sort of lead attacks and stuff. So, I mean, I think for the time being, I'll probably put him. Yeah. I mean, if he goes incompetent, then he probably goes under. Yeah. Okay. I think he probably belongs incompetent and just ahead of Konyev, mainly because he held slightly more senior command, at least in 1812. But he could easily go in Unbreakable. But I think, I think we'll put him between Dibich and Konyev and Competent for the time being.
We've got some easy ones coming up now.